He looked at his watch, 8:45 a.m., 15 minutes to the interview that would save his life. Then he looked at the woman stranded in the smoke on the side of the highway. He had a choice: save himself or save a stranger. He didn't know that the woman standing in the rain, shivering next to her broken-down luxury sedan, wasn't just a stranded motorist. She was the one person who held his future in her hands. This is the story of Ethan Caldwell, a single father who lost everything to do the right thing, only to find that kindness is the only investment that always pays off. You won't believe who she really was. The rain in Seattle didn't just fall. It felt like it was trying to erase the city. Ethan Caldwell stood in the center of his tiny one-bedroom apartment, staring at his reflection in the cracked hallway mirror. The suit was charcoal gray, bought 5 years ago for his wedding. A marriage that had ended in a tragic car accident 2 years later, leaving him alone with a mountain of medical debt and a 3-year-old daughter, Lily. "Daddy Juice!" Ethan snapped out of his trance. He turned to see Lily, her blonde curls a tangled mess, holding up an empty sippy cup. Her pajamas were mismatched, and there was a smudge of oatmeal on her cheek. "Coming, bug," Ethan said, his voice softer than he felt. He checked his watch. 7:30 a.m. He had to drop Lily at Mrs. Gable's daycare by 8 o'clock and make it to downtown by 9 o'clock for the interview at Horizon Corp. This wasn't just a job. It was a lifeline. 2 days ago, he'd found the eviction notice taped to his door. Final notice. If he didn't secure the position of senior logistics manager, a role he was overqualified for, but desperate to get he and Lily would be living out of his 2012 Ford Focus by next week. He quickly poured the apple juice, wiped Lily's face with a damp cloth, and scooped her up. "All right, princess. Big day. Daddy's gonna go get that job, okay?" "Get job?" Lily cheered, not understanding the stakes but sensing her father's need for encouragement. The drive to Mrs. Gable's was a blur of windshield wipers and brake lights. The Ford rattled ominously every time he idled. The transmission was slipping another bill he couldn't pay. After a tearful goodbye, Lily was going through a clingy phase. Ethan was back on the road. 8:15 a.m. He was making good time. The interview was at 9 o'clock. Horizon Corp was a massive conglomerate, the kind of place that chewed people up, but the salary was enough to clear the rent arrears in 2 months. He adjusted his tie in the rear-view mirror. He looked tired, the dark circles under his eyes visible even in the dim morning light. But he looked professional. He merged onto I-5, the traffic heavy but moving. He allowed himself a moment of hope. "I can do this. I know logistics. I can run a supply chain in my sleep." Then he saw it. About 2 miles ahead of the exit for downtown, a silver sedan was pulled over on the narrow shoulder. Hazard lights were blinking weak orange pulses against the grey downpour. Steam was billowing from under the hood, white and thick. Ethan stayed in the middle lane. "Don't look," he told himself. "You have 45 minutes. You cannot stop." As he passed, he glanced over. It wasn't a safe place to break down. Cars were whipping past at 60 miles an hour, spraying dirty mist. Standing next to the car, completely exposed to the rain, was a woman. She looked older, maybe in her late 50s, wearing a beige trench coat that was soaked through. She was holding a phone to her ear, looking frantically at the screen, then at the passing cars. She looked terrified. Ethan drove past. He gripped the steering wheel. "It's not my problem. Someone else will call it in. I have Lily to think about. I have the rent." He drove another quarter-mile. The image of the woman's face, pale, panicked water streaming down her glasses, stuck in his mind. It reminded him of his mother. It reminded him of the night his wife died, waiting for help that came too late. "Damn it," Ethan whispered. He checked the dashboard clock. 8 Walt. 10:25 a.m. If he stopped for 5 minutes just to make sure she had a tow truck coming, he could still make it. He'd have to run from the parking garage, but he could make it. Ethan swore, again checked his blind spot, and swerved hard across 2 lanes of honking traffic to reach the shoulder. He threw the Ford into reverse and backed up until he was just behind the steaming silver sedan. He popped his trunk, grabbed an umbrella and stepped out into the freezing rain. The woman jumped when he tapped on her window. She rolled it down an inch. "Ma'am, are you okay?" Ethan shouted over the roar of traffic. "My phone died," she shouted back, her voice shaking. "I was trying to call AAA, and it just went black, and there's smoke everywhere." "Pop the hood," Ethan said. "Let me take a look." She hesitated, eyeing him. Ethan knew what he looked like, a big guy stressed out driving a beat-up car. "I'm late for a meeting, but I can't leave you here," he said, trying to sound calm. "I'm Ethan. Just let me see if it's something simple." She nodded and pulled the latch. Ethan wrestled the hood up. The steam hit him in the face, smelling of sweet glycol. He waved it away and looked at the engine block. It was a Mercedes, a complex mess of plastic covers, but the problem was obvious. A radiator hose had burst. Green coolant was hissed all over the engine block. "It's a blown hose," Ethan said, leaning back down to the window. "You aren't going anywhere in this." "Oh God," the woman said, putting her head in her hands. "I have to be at a board meeting at 9:30. This is a disaster." Ethan looked at his watch, 8:35 a.m. "Oh, look," Ethan said. "I can't fix the hose, but I can wait here with you until a tow truck comes, or I can try to flag down a trooper." "Can you let me use your phone?" she asked. "I need to call my assistant." Ethan patted his pockets. He froze. His phone wasn't in his jacket. It wasn't in his pants. He looked back at his car. His phone was sitting on the center console, plugged into the charger. "1 second," he said. He ran back to his Ford. As he opened the door, a semi-truck roared past, hitting a massive puddle in the breakdown lane. A wall of brown, oily sludge water rose up like a wave. It hit Ethan squarely in the back. He gasped from the cold shock. He stood there for a second, feeling the water soak instantly through his charcoal suit jacket, through his white shirt, down to his skin. He looked down. His pants were splattered with mud. His shoes were ruined. He was a mess. He grabbed his phone and walked back to the woman, oblivious to the rain now. He was already destroyed. "Here," he said, handing her the phone through the window. "Make your call." She dialed quickly, her fingers trembling. "Margaret, it's Olivia." "Yes, complete failure. I'm on I-5 North Mile marker, 164. Send a car, now, and call Henderson. Tell him to stall." She handed the phone back. She looked at Ethan, really looked at him for the first time. She saw the ruined suit, the water dripping off his nose, the despair in his eyes that he was trying to hide. "You're soaking wet," she said. "Hazard of the trade," Ethan forced a smile. It was a grimace. "You said you were late for a meeting," she said. "What kind of meeting?" "Job interview," Ethan said, wiping mud off his sleeve uselessly. "Horizon Corp, 9:00 a.m. The woman's eyes widened slightly. "Horizon? That's a big opportunity." "Yeah," Ethan said. He looked at his watch. 8:45 a.m. "And I'm not going to make it." "You should go," she said. "My driver is coming. You've done enough." "I can't leave you alone on the highway," Ethan said stubbornly. "I'll wait until your ride gets here." "Go," she insisted. "You can still make it if you drive fast." Ethan looked at his car, then at her. He knew he looked like a drowned rat. Even if he made it, who would hire him looking like this? But he had to try. For Lily. "Are you sure?" "Yes, go." "Thank you, Ethan." He nodded, ran back to his car, and peeled out into traffic. He drove faster than he ever had, ignoring the rattling transmission. He arrived at the Horizon Corp parking garage at 9:05 a.m. He sprinted to the elevator, water squishing in his shoes. He hit the lobby, ran to the reception desk. "Ethan Caldwell," he panted. "Interview with Mr. Sterling. 9:00 a.m. The receptionist looked him up and down with open disgust. She picked up the phone. "Mr. Grantham, the 9:00 a.m. is here." "Yes." Well, you'll see." She hung up. "Go to the 41st floor, conference room B." Ethan took the elevator up, his heart pounding against his ribs like a trapped bird. "Just explain what happened. Tell the truth. They'll understand." He walked into conference room B. A man was sitting at the head of a long glass table. He was in his 40s, wearing a suit that cost more than Ethan's car, with hair so perfectly gelled it looked like plastic. This was Greg Grantham, the HR director. Grantham didn't look up from his file. "You're late, Mr. Caldwell." "I know, I'm so sorry," Ethan said, remaining standing. "I ran into an emergency on the highway. A woman was stranded, her car broke down. I had to stop and help." Grantham looked up. He took in the wet hair, the mud stains on the jacket, the ruined shoes. He laughed, a cold, short sound. "You stopped to help a damsel in distress," Grantham sneered. "That's the best you could come up with. You look like you slept in a gutter, Caldwell." "It was a semi-truck," Ethan said, his face heating up. "Look, I know I look bad, but I know this industry. I managed a warehouse with 0 safety incidents for 4 years. If you look at my numbers," Grantham closed the file, "we are Horizon Corp. We represent excellence. We represent precision." He gestured vaguely at Ethan's damp clothes. "This is not precision. This is a liability." "I am qualified for this job," Ethan said, his voice hardening. "I just need a chance." "Your chance was at 9:00 a.m. sharp, wearing a clean suit," Grantham said. "Get out." "Please," Ethan said. The desperation leaked through. "I have a daughter. I really need this." Grantham stood up and walked to the door, holding it open. "Everyone has a sob story, Caldwell. We're hiring managers, not charities. Leave before I call security." Ethan stood there for a second, the humiliation burning his throat. Then he turned and walked out. The walk back to the car was a funeral march. The rain had stopped, but the grey sky remained. Ethan sat in the driver's seat of his Ford, gripping the wheel until his knuckles turned white. He didn't start the engine. He just sat there and let out a scream of pure, unfiltered frustration. He punched the dashboard. Why did I stop? He rested his forehead on the wheel. He knew why. Because that's who he was. Because if it had been Lily stranded there 20 years from now, he'd want someone to stop. But right now, being a good person felt like a curse. His phone buzzed. It was his landlord, Mr. Henderson. "Ethan, I haven't seen the deposit. Tomorrow is the 15th. If I don't have the check, I'm changing the locks on Monday. I'm sorry, but business is business." Ethan threw the phone onto the passenger seat. He drove to a staffing agency on 4th Avenue. He filled out forms for temp work, construction, sanitation, anything. They told him they'd call. They never called. He picked up Lily at 5 p.m. She was the only bright spot in the darkness. "Daddy wet?" she asked, poking his dried, stiff jacket. "Yeah, Daddy went swimming," he joked weakly. They went home. Dinner was buttered noodles because the fridge was empty. Ethan sat at the small kitchen table, going through the classifieds in the newspaper, circling things with a red pen. Night shift security. Dishwasher. Uber driver car, too old. He put his head in his hands. He was failing her. Across town, in a penthouse apartment overlooking the glittering skyline of Seattle, the atmosphere was very different. Olivia Sterling sat by her fireplace, wrapped in a cashmere blanket. She was sipping hot tea, her silver hair dried and styled perfectly. But she wasn't relaxing. She was fuming. "Grantham is an idiot," she said to the air. Her assistant Margaret stood nearby, holding a tablet. He filled the logistics position Ms. Sterling. He hired a man named Bradley Cooper. No relation. "Bradley," Olivia scoffed. "The one with the MBA from that online school, and the teeth that are too white. I saw his resume. He's a shark. He'll eat the warehouse staff alive." "Grantham insists he's the best fit for the corporate culture," Margaret said. Olivia set her tea down. "Corporate culture. I built this company on grit, Margaret. On people who solve problems, not people who create spreadsheets to hide them." She thought back to the morning, the rain, the man with the sad eyes and the gentle hands. He had ruined his suit to help her. He hadn't asked for money. He hadn't even asked for her name. He had just handed her his phone, his only lifeline, and stood in the sludge so she could be safe. "Ethan," he had said. "Interview at Horizon." "Margaret," Olivia said sharply, "did a man named Ethan interview today for the logistics role?" Margaret tapped on her tablet. "Let me check the visitor logs. Yes, Ethan Caldwell. Checked in at 9:05 a.m. Checked out at 9:15 a.m. 10 minutes. Olivia raised an eyebrow. "Get me the security footage of the 40-floor waiting area, now." Margaret hesitated. "Ma'am, it's 8 p.m. Did I stutter? 10 minutes later, Olivia was watching the footage on a large monitor. She saw Ethan run out of the elevator dripping wet mud on his pants. She saw him pleading with the receptionist. She saw him enter the conference room, and less than 5 minutes later she saw him walk out. His shoulders slumped, looking like a man who had just lost everything. She zoomed in on his face as he waited for the elevator. He wasn't angry. He looked broken. "Grantham turned him away because of his appearance," Olivia whispered. The realization hit her with a pang of guilt. "He looked like that because of me." She stood up, the blanket falling away. She walked to the window. She was the CEO of Horizon Corp. She was Olivia Sterling, the Iron Lady of logistics. She hadn't visited the office in 3 months, due to her health scare, leaving Grantham and the board to run things. Clearly that had been a mistake. "Margaret," Olivia said, her voice turning into the steel tone that had built an empire. "Cancel my physical therapy tomorrow, and find out everything you can about Ethan Caldwell, where he lives, his financial situation, his family. Everything." "What are you planning, Miss Sterling?" Olivia smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator about to reclaim its territory. "I'm planning to fix a broken hose," she said, "and then I'm going to fire a mechanic." The weekend passed in a blur of anxiety that felt physical, like a heavy stone sitting in Ethan's stomach. By Saturday afternoon, the reality of his financial ruin had set in. The bank account balance read $42.18. Rent was due Monday. It was $1,200. He was short by everything. Ethan stood in the center of a pawn shop on 2nd Avenue, the smell of dust and old metal filling his nose. The clerk, a man with thick glasses and thicker fingers, was examining Ethan's watch with a jeweler's loupe. It wasn't a Rolex. It was a vintage Omega, a gift from his father when Ethan graduated college. It was the only heirloom he had left. His father had said, "Time is the only thing you can't earn back, son. Spend it wisely." 150, the clerk grunted, tossing the watch onto the glass counter. "It's worth at least 800. Ethan argued, his voice cracking slightly. "It's a 1975 Seamaster. The movement is original." "It's scratched, and I gotta sell it," the clerk said, bored. 150. Take it or leave it." Ethan looked at the watch. Then he thought of the eviction notice. He thought of Lily's favorite teddy bear getting thrown into a dumpster because they had nowhere to go. "Make it 200, Ethan pleaded. "Please, I need to buy groceries." The clerk sighed, rolled his eyes, and opened the register. "Fine, 200, but don't come back asking for more." Ethan took the cash. It felt dirty in his hands. He walked out into the drizzle, feeling lighter in weight, but heavier in spirit. He bought milk, eggs, pasta, and a small toy, a plastic dinosaur for Lily. It cost $3.99. He shouldn't have spent it, but he needed to see her smile. He needed to remember why he was fighting. Sunday was worse. Mr. Henderson, the landlord, caught him in the hallway while he was taking out the trash. Henderson wasn't a monster, but he was a businessman who was tired of excuses. He was a short, stout man who always smelled of peppermint. "Ethan," Henderson said, crossing his arms, "don't tell me the check is in the mail." I have a lead on a job," Ethan lied. "I just need a few more days." "You've had a few more days for 3 months, Henderson said, shaking his head. "I have a couple interested in the unit. They have cash. I can't carry you anymore, Ethan. Tuesday. If the money isn't there by Tuesday noon, you're out. I'll have the sheriff there. I'm sorry." Ethan went back inside and locked the door. He slid down against the wood until he hit the floor. He looked around the apartment. It was small, the carpet was worn, and the paint was peeling, but it was home. It was where Lily took her first steps. It was where he and his wife had assembled the crib, laughing as they couldn't figure out the instructions. He was going to lose it all because he stopped to help a stranger. A dark thought crept into his mind. If I hadn't stopped, I'd be a manager right now. I'd be signing a lease on a better place. I'd be safe. He hated himself for thinking it. He hated the woman in the silver car for a fleeting second. But mostly, he hated the world for punishing kindness. Monday morning, Ethan dressed in jeans and a t-shirt. He went to the industrial district, standing in line at a day labor center. He spent 10 hours hauling bags of cement for a construction crew. It was back-breaking work. He wasn't used to it. By the time he finished, his hands were blistered and his back was screaming. He made $120. Cash. It wasn't enough. It wasn't even close. He picked Lily up from daycare, his body aching so badly he could barely lift her into the car seat. "Daddy sad?" Lily asked, her blue eyes wide. "No, baby." Ethan lied again. "Daddy's just tired." He drove home, the transmission of the Ford slipping and grinding with every gear change. As he pulled up to his apartment building, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A black town car was parked in front of the building. It was sleek, shiny, and completely out of place in this neighborhood of dented Hondas and rusted pickups. Ethan parked and got out, holding Lily's hand. He kept his head down, trying to walk past the car to get to the front door. The rear window of the town car rolled down. "Mr. Caldwell." Ethan froze. He turned slowly. Sitting in the back seat was the woman. The woman from the highway. She looked different. Her hair was perfectly coiffed. She was wearing a navy blazer that looked like silk, and she had a calmness about her that radiated power. But the eyes were the same. "You," Ethan said. "Me," she said. She opened the door and stepped out. Her shoes clicked on the cracked pavement. I realized I never got to thank you properly. You left so quickly." Ethan shifted Lily to his other hip. He felt ashamed of his dirty t-shirt, his blistered hands, the run-down building behind him. "It's fine," Ethan said. "I hope your car is okay." "The car is being repaired," she said. She looked at the building, then at Lily. "Is this your daughter?" "Yes, this is Lily." "Hi, Lily," the woman said softly. Lily hid her face in Ethan's neck. "Look, lady," Ethan said, tired and defensive. "I appreciate you stopping by, but I've had a really long day. If you're just here to say thanks, you're welcome. But I have to go." "You didn't get the job," she stated. It wasn't a question. Ethan flinched. "No, I didn't. Because you were late. Because I looked like I swam in a sewer." Ethan snapped, his patience fraying. "The HR director laughed me out of the room, said I was a liability." The woman's expression tightened. A flash of anger crossed her eyes, but it wasn't directed at him. "I see," she said. "I am truly sorry, Ethan. I cost you an opportunity." "It is what it is," Ethan said, turning toward the door. "Being a good Samaritan doesn't pay the rent. Have a nice life, ma'am." "Wait," she called out. Ethan stopped. She reached into her purse and pulled out a thick, cream-colored envelope. She walked over and held it out to him. "I can't take your money," Ethan said, backing away. "I didn't do it for money." "It's not money," she said. "Open it." Ethan hesitated, then took the envelope. He tore it open with his rough, cement dust-covered fingers. Inside was a single card. It was heavy stock embossed with a gold logo. Horizon Corp. Beneath the logo, handwritten in elegant cursive, were the words, "Tuesday, 9:00 a.m. boardroom, a 50th floor. Do not be late." "What is this?" Ethan asked, confused. "A second chance," she said. "Show up. Wear the suit. The ruined one." "What?" Ethan looked at her like she was crazy. "Why would I wear the ruined suit?" "Trust me," she said. She got back into the car. "See you tomorrow, Ethan." The black car glided away, leaving Ethan standing on the sidewalk, holding the card, wondering if he was being mocked or saved. Tuesday morning came with a heavy grey sky. Ethan stood before the mirror. He had done what she asked. He was wearing the charcoal suit. He had tried to clean it, but the water stains were set, and the mud splatters on the pant legs were faded, but visible. He looked like a man who had slept in his clothes. "This is insanity," he muttered. But he had no choice. Henderson was coming at noon. This was the Hail Mary. He dropped Lily off. Mrs. Gable gave him a sympathetic look, knowing the payment was late, and drove to Horizon Corp. The security guard at the lobby desk frowned when Ethan approached. "I have a meeting," Ethan said, showing the card. The guard took the card, looked at it, and his eyebrows shot up. He ran it through a scanner. A green light beeped. "Top floor," the guard said, his tone suddenly respectful. The private elevator is to your left. Ethan walked past the regular elevators where employees in perfect suits were crowding in and approached the single gold-plated elevator at the end of the hall. He stepped inside. There were no buttons. The doors closed and the car shot upward smoothly. The doors opened on the 50th floor. It was different here. The carpet was thicker. The walls were lined with modern art. The silence was heavy. Ethan stepped out. He saw a reception desk empty. He saw a set of massive double doors made of frosted glass. "Hey, you!" Ethan turned. Striding down the hallway, looking furious, was Greg Grantham. The HR director stopped a few feet from Ethan, his face twisting into a sneer. "Caldwell," Grantham barked. "How the hell did you get up here, security?" He looked around for a guard. "Who let you up?" "This is the executive floor. The board of directors is meeting in 10 minutes. "I was told to come here," Ethan said, holding up the card. Grantham snatched the card from his hand. He looked at it and laughed. This is a generic visitor pass. Someone is pranking you, pal. Or maybe you forged it. You're desperate, I get it. But stalking the executives, that's criminal trespassing." "I'm not stalking anyone," Ethan said, his fists clenching. "A woman gave this to me." She said, "A woman," Grantham mocked. "Let me guess, the damsel from the highway. Did she give you a magic bean, too?" Grantham grabbed Ethan's arm. "You're leaving, now, before I have you arrested." "Get your hands off me," Ethan said, pulling away. "I'm going to enjoy banning you from this building permanently." Grantham spat. He pulled out his phone. "Security. I have an intruder on the 50th floor. Yes, the hobo from last week. Send a team." The elevator dinged behind them. Ethan and Grantham both turned. The doors opened and a group of people walked out. They were older, serious-looking men and women in expensive suits, the board of directors. And walking at the front of the pack, flanked by 2 assistants, was the woman from the highway. She wasn't wearing a trench coat today. She was wearing a sharp white power suit that made her look like royalty. She walked with a cane, favoring her left leg slightly, but her presence was commanding. Grantham's face went pale. He dropped his phone. It clattered on the floor. "Miss Sterling," Grantham stammered. I didn't know you were returning today. We prepared the briefing for you, but Olivia Sterling didn't even look at Grantham. Her eyes were locked on Ethan. Ethan stood there, stunned. "Ms. Sterling." The woman with the broken radiator was the CEO, the billionaire owner of Horizon Corp. "Ms. Sterling." Grantham continued, his voice rising in panic, trying to regain control. "I apologize for this disturbance. This man is a rejected applicant who broke in. Security is on the way." Olivia raised a hand. Silence fell over the hallway. She walked up to Ethan. She looked at his stained suit. She looked at his terrified eyes. "Good morning, Ethan," she said, her voice warm and clear. "Thank you for coming." Grantham choked. You know him." "Know him." Olivia turned slowly to face Grantham. The warmth vanished from her eyes, replaced by glacial ice. "Mr. Grantham, this man is the reason I am standing here today. This man is the reason I made it to my physical therapy appointment last week, which saved me from a blood clot that my doctor said could have been fatal had I been stuck in that car for another hour." The board members murmured amongst themselves. Grantham looked like he was going to be sick. But look at him," Grantham sputtered, pointing at Ethan's clothes. "He's a mess. He violates every code of conduct we have. I interviewed him, Ms. Sterling. He was late. He was wet. He didn't demonstrate the Horizon Standard." "The Horizon Standard," Olivia repeated. She turned to the board. "Gentlemen, ladies, follow me to the boardroom. Both of you." She pointed at Ethan and Grantham. The boardroom was massive. A long mahogany table stretched the length of the room, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of the city. The rain had started again, lashing against the glass. The 12 members of the board took their seats. Olivia sat at the head. She gestured for Ethan to stand at one end of the table and Grantham at the other. Ethan felt like he was on trial. His heart was hammering so hard he thought everyone could hear it. He kept his hands behind his back to hide the tremors. "Greg," Olivia started, leaning back in her chair. "You rejected Mr. Caldwell for the senior logistics manager position. Why?" Grantham straightened his tie, finding his footing. He was a corporate animal. He knew how to spin things. "Ms. Sterling, as I explained, Mr. Caldwell arrived 5 minutes late. He was disheveled. He was soaking wet and covered in mud. Horizon Corp is a Fortune 500 company. We cannot have client-facing managers who look like vagrants. It shows a lack of preparation, a lack of respect." "I see," Olivia said. She turned to Ethan. "Ethan, why were you late?" Ethan cleared his throat. "I stopped to help a motorist on I-5. And why were you wet? A semi-truck drove through a puddle while I was getting my phone for her," Ethan said softly. "And why did you stop?" Olivia asked. This was the important question. You knew you were running a tight schedule. You knew you needed this job. Why did you stop? Ethan looked down at his ruined shoes. "Because she looked scared," he said simply, "and because I have a daughter, and if she was ever stuck like that, I'd hope someone would stop for her. I couldn't drive past." Olivia looked around the table. "I was that motorist," she revealed to the board. Gasps went around the room. "I was stranded," Olivia continued. "Hundreds of cars passed me. Expensive cars, driven by successful people. People who surely fit the Horizon Standard. Only one person stopped. A man driving a car that sounded like it was dying, wearing a suit that was clearly his only one." She stood up. "Mr. Grantham, you speak of precision. You speak of image. But logistics is not about looking pretty in a suit. Logistics is about solving problems under pressure. It is about adapting to disaster. It is about reliability." She pointed a finger at Grantham. "You saw a dirty suit. I saw a man who sacrificed his own immediate well-being to ensure the safety of a stranger. I saw a man who, despite being soaked and late, still showed up to the interview and tried to present his case. That is resilience. That is character." "But he has no experience," Grantham shouted, losing his composure. "His resume—" "I reviewed his resume this morning," Olivia cut him off. 4 years managing a high-volume warehouse. 0 safety incidents. He implemented a tracking system that saved his previous company 15% in fuel costs. He is overqualified." She turned to Ethan. "Ethan, how much money do you have in your bank account right now?" Ethan's face burned. He didn't want to answer. "Please," she said gently. $42, Ethan whispered. "Ethan, and you pawned your watch on Saturday to buy food." Ethan nodded, tears pricking his eyes. "How did she know Mr. Grantham?" Olivia said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You turned away a man who was fighting for his life solely because he didn't look the part. You judged the wrapping paper and threw away the gift. She looked at the board. I built this company on values. Somewhere along the way, under Mr. Grantham's HR leadership, we lost them. We started hiring suits instead of people. Mrs. Sterling, surely you aren't suggesting, Grantham started. I'm not suggesting anything, Olivia said. I am commanding. Mr. Grantham, you are relieved of your duties effective immediately. Security will escort you out. The silence in the room was deafening. Grantham's mouth opened and closed like a fish. You can't be serious, Grantham whispered. I am very serious. And since you value appearance so much, Olivia noted, you might want to fix your tie. It's crooked. 2 security guards stepped forward. Grantham, red-faced and sputtering, was led out of the room. The heavy doors clicked shut behind him. Ethan stood there trembling. He had just watched a titan fall. Olivia turned her attention back to Ethan. The room was still silent. The board members were watching him, assessing him. Now, Mr. Caldwell, Olivia said, sitting back down. We have a vacant position. Actually, we have 2. She slid a folder across the long table. It slid smoothly, stopping right in front of him. The logistics manager job is yours if you want it, she said. But given the departure of Mr. Grantham, I have a different proposal. One that might utilize your unique ability to spot what matters. Ethan opened the folder. He read the title on the contract. Director of People and Culture. I don't have HR experience, Ethan stammered. Good. Olivia smiled. I don't want an HR drone. I want someone who understands people. Someone who knows that a resume doesn't tell the whole story. I want you to rebuild our hiring process. I want you to find me more people like you. She paused. The starting salary is $180,000 a year, plus a signing bonus. The bonus is exactly the amount needed to pay off your debts and buy a reliable car. Ethan felt his knees give out. He grabbed the edge of the table to steady himself. The room spun. Ethan tried to speak, but his throat closed up. He thought of Henderson. He thought of the pawn shop. He thought of Lily. Is that a yes? Olivia asked softly. Yes, Ethan choked out. Yes, thank you. Don't thank me, Olivia said. You earned it on the side of the highway. Now go home. Pay your landlord. Get your daughter and buy back your watch. We'll see you on Monday. Ethan nodded. He turned to leave but stopped at the door. Ms. Sterling. Yes, Ethan. I'm glad you're safe, he said. I'm glad you stopped, she replied. Ethan walked out of the boardroom. As the doors closed, he let out a breath he felt like he'd been holding for 2 years. He walked to the elevator, pressed the button, and as the doors closed, he finally let the tears fall. But the story wasn't over. Ethan thought the battle was won, but he didn't know that Greg Grantham wasn't the type of man to go quietly. And Olivia Sterling had secrets of her own that were about to threaten the very company she had just hired him to save. For the first time in 3 years, Ethan Caldwell slept through the night. When he woke up on Wednesday, the sunlight hitting the peeling paint of his bedroom walls didn't look depressing. It looked like promise. He had deposited the check. He had paid Mr. Henderson 6 months of rent in advance. The look on the landlord's face, a mixture of shock and genuine relief, had been worth every second of anxiety. He had gone back to the pawn shop. The clerk had tried to charge him $250. Ethan paid it without blinking. The Omega was back on his wrist, ticking steadily, a heartbeat of his family history restored. But as Ethan walked into the glass tower of Horizon Corp on Monday morning, The fairy tale began to show cracks. He wasn't invisible anymore. As he walked to his new office on the 50th floor, heads turned. Whispers followed him. "That's him. The charity case." "I heard he was a beggar she found on the street." "It's sad, really. She's losing her mind." Ethan tried to ignore it. He threw himself into the work. He spent the first week auditing the HR files, trying to understand how a company this successful had become so cold. What he found was disturbing. Under Grantham's reign, turnover was 40%. Exit interviews cited hostile management and lack of empathy. It was a data-driven tyranny. On Thursday afternoon, Olivia summoned him to her office. She looked frailer than she had in the boardroom. The iron strength was there, but her skin was papery, and her hands shook slightly as she poured tea. "You're doing good work, Ethan," she said. "I see you've already flagged the discrepancies in the overtime pay." "It's a logistics problem," Ethan said, sitting opposite her. "Unhappy workers are inefficient workers. Grantham was saving pennies to lose dollars." Olivia smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Ethan, there is another reason I hired you, a reason I didn't tell the board." She placed a heavy file on the desk. "I am dying, Ethan." The air left the room. Ethan stared at her. "What Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. I have 6 months, maybe less." She took a sip of tea, her hand trembling. "I have no children, no husband. My life has been this company. For 40 years I built it. But I realized something on that highway last week." She looked out the window at the rain. "I realized that if I died right there on the side of the road, the company I built would be inherited by sharks like Grantham. Men who would strip it for parts and fire the mothers and fathers who work here just to boost the stock price by 1/4 of a point. I realized I have no legacy." She looked back at Ethan. "I didn't just hire you to fix HR, Ethan. I'm grooming you. I'm setting up a trust to control the voting shares of Horizon Corp. I want you to be one of the 3 trustees." Ethan was speechless. "Miss Sterling?" "Olivia, I can't. I'm a warehouse manager. I'm nobody." "You are a man who stopped," she said fiercely. "That makes you somebody. You have a moral compass. That is the one asset that cannot be taught." Suddenly the heavy oak doors to her office burst open. Ethan jumped up. Olivia remained seated, though she stiffened. Greg Grantham walked in. But he wasn't alone. He was flanked by 3 men in expensive, dark suits, lawyers, and a man holding a camera. "Get out!" Ethan stepped forward, his protective instinct flaring. "Sit down, charity boy," Grantham sneered. He looked triumphant. He held up a sheaf of papers. "Olivia," Grantham said, his voice dripping with faux concern. "We're here to save you from yourself." "What is the meaning of this, Greg?" Olivia asked, her voice icy. "This," Grantham pointed to the camera, "is documentation. We have filed a motion with the court and the board for an emergency vote of no confidence. We are invoking the mental incapacity clause of the company bylaws." He slapped the papers onto her desk. "You hired a destitute man with 0 executive experience and put him in a director role. You gave him a 6-figure bonus immediately. And now—" Grantham grinned. "We found your medical records, Olivia. We know about the cancer. We know about the medication." He turned to the camera. "The narrative is clear. A dying, confused woman is being taken advantage of by a con artist she met on the street. The board is freaking out, Olivia. The stock dropped 4% this morning, just on the rumors I leaked." Ethan felt a cold rage building in his chest. You leaked your own company's secrets to crash the stock just to get power. I'm saving the company, Grantham shouted, from a senile old woman and a gold digger. Grantham leaned over the desk. Resign, Olivia. Sign the company over to my interim management team, or we drag this man through the mud. We'll paint him as a predator who targeted a sick woman. We'll destroy his reputation so thoroughly he won't be able to get a job sweeping floors. He looked at Ethan. Think about your daughter Caldwell. Do you want her seeing her daddy on the news, accused of elder abuse and fraud? Ethan went still. The threat to Lily. It was the one thing he couldn't tolerate. Olivia looked defeated. She slumped in her chair. She looked at Ethan, her eyes filled with tears. Ethan, I'm so sorry. I didn't think he would sink this low. Sign the papers, Olivia, Grantham commanded. Ethan looked at the papers. Then he looked at Grantham. He thought about the logistics of the situation. He thought about leverage. Ethan started to laugh. It was a low, dry laugh. Grantham frowned. You think this is funny? I think you're bad at logistics, Greg, Ethan said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. What are you doing? You know, Ethan said, tapping the screen. When I started auditing the HR files this week, I found something interesting. A supply chain anomaly. Ethan walked around the desk, standing next to Olivia. He placed a hand on her shoulder. I noticed that Horizon uses a specific contracting firm for all our temporary labor. North Star Staffing. We pay them 30% above market rate. Grantham's face twitched. So what vendor relations? I looked up North Star Staffing. Ethan continued his voice, steady and hard. It's a shell company registered in the Caymans. And guess who the signatory is? Ethan held up his phone. On the screen was a scanned document. It's your wife, Greg. The room went silent. The lawyers behind Grantham shifted uncomfortably. You've been funneling millions of dollars of company money into your own pocket for 5 years, Ethan said. I didn't know what to do with the info yet. I was going to bring it to Olivia on Monday. But since you brought a camera... Ethan looked at the cameraman. Are you recording? The cameraman nodded, looking terrified. Good, Ethan said. Because Mr. Grantham just attempted to blackmail the CEO while under investigation for corporate embezzlement and fraud. That's a felony. Grantham lunged for the phone. Give me that! Ethan didn't flinch. He used his warehouse strength, the strength built lifting cement and boxes, and caught Grantham's wrist in mid-air. He twisted it, forcing Grantham back. Don't, Ethan warned. Olivia stood up. She didn't look frail anymore. She looked like the titan she was. Gentlemen, she said to the lawyers, you have 2 choices. You can leave now and pretend you were never part of this attempt to overthrow the CEO, or you can stay and be named as accomplices in Mr. Grantham's embezzlement trial. The lawyers didn't hesitate. They turned and walked out. The cameraman followed them, taking the footage with him. Grantham stood alone, cradling his wrist, his face a mask of ruin. You're finished, Greg, Olivia said softly. The police are on their way. I suggest you call your wife. The scandal that followed was massive, but it wasn't the one Grantham had planned. The news was filled with the story of the corrupt executive who tried to frame a dying CEO and the hero employee who stopped him. But the real story happened quietly, away from the cameras. 6 months later. Ethan stood in a cemetery overlooking the Puget Sound. The rain was falling again, a soft, misty Seattle drizzle. He held a black umbrella over a fresh grave. Olivia Sterling, beloved leader, mentor, and friend. He wasn't alone. Hundreds of people were there. Warehouse workers in high-vis vests, truck drivers, executives, and office staff. They stood together in the rain. Lily, now 4 years old, held Ethan's hand. She was wearing a little black coat. "Is she sleeping, Daddy?" Lily asked. "Yes, Bug," Ethan whispered. "She's resting. She worked very hard." Olivia had passed away peacefully in her sleep 3 days ago, but before she died, she had finalized the trust. Ethan wasn't the CEO. He didn't want to be. He was the chairman of the Sterling Trust. His job was to ensure that the company never lost its soul again. He spent his days visiting the warehouses, talking to the drivers, fixing the hoses that were broken in the system. He had bought a house, a modest place, with a big backyard for Lily. He had paid off all his debt. He had put money away for Lily's college. But the biggest change wasn't the money. As the funeral service ended, a young man approached Ethan. The man looked nervous. He was wearing a cheap, ill-fitting suit. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept in days. "Mr. Caldwell?" the young man asked. "Just Ethan," he replied. I'm here about the job opening, in the mailroom. I know this is a funeral and I'm so sorry to interrupt, but I'm desperate. I took 3 buses to get here because I heard you might be here." Ethan looked at the young man. He saw the worn-out shoes. He saw the desperation in the eyes. He saw the hope. He saw himself. Ethan handed his umbrella to Lily. He reached into his pocket. He didn't pull out a business card. He pulled out a crumpled, stained visitor pass, the one Olivia had given him that day. He had kept it as a reminder. "What's your name?" Ethan asked. "Marcus. Marcus Thorne." "Well, Marcus," Ethan said, putting a hand on the young man's shoulder. "You're late, but you showed up. Do you have a license?" "No, sir. My car broke down last week. I can't afford to fix it." Ethan smiled. He looked at the grave of the woman who had saved him. He knew exactly what she would do. "Come with me," Ethan said. "Let's go get your car fixed. Then we'll talk about a job." "Really?" "But why?" Marcus asked, stunned. "You don't even know me." Ethan picked up Lily, who smiled at Marcus. "Because someone once told me that kindness is the only investment that always pays off," Ethan said. "And I'm just managing her portfolio." They walked away together into the rain, not as strangers, but as people helping people. And somewhere, amidst the grey clouds of Seattle, the sun began to break through. And that is the story of how a single act of kindness on a rainy highway changed the fate of a father, a billionaire, and an entire company. Ethan thought he was losing everything when he stopped his car that day. But in reality, he was planting the seeds for a harvest he couldn't yet see. It's a powerful reminder to all of us. In a world that tells us to hustle to compete and to look out for number one, sometimes the most profitable thing you can do is simply be a human being. You never know who you are helping. You never know what battles people are fighting behind their expensive suits or their broken-down cars. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel share these stories with more people. And if you want more real-life dramas about karma, justice, and the power of human connection, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. What would you have done in Ethan's shoes? Would you have stopped? Let me know in the comments below. Until next time, be kind.